So I want to introduce our speaker that's going to talk a little bit about on some of the things he's fought for veterans. And first I want to tell you a little bit about him. He spent 25 years in the Army, so he's got skin in the game. 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in the AFG and 1 in Jordan. He's currently not only in our Kansas house, but he works as a professor for Homeland Security program at Wichita State University. Holds a PhD in history from KSU. He and his wife own, Bon Thai restaurants in Leavenworth and Manhattan. He served in the legislature here in Kansas for 5 years, and he's been chairman of the House Committee on Elections for 3 years. Please welcome Pat Proctor, Kansas House.
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me here tonight. Thank you all for your service. So it was not my life plan to be in politics, let alone in the House of Representatives. But you know, a wise man once told me, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So here I am. I spent 25 years in the Army, as Jack told you. My retirement plan was to be a professor, which ended up happening while I was up at Fort Riley. I did my PhD in history, and through a strange series of events, ended up in the Homeland Security program at Wichita State. And then I figured whatever time I had left, my wife would fill in working for her with the restaurants, running to Sam's or doing whatever she needed. But I ended up getting involved in politics because of my town, Leavenworth. I live in Leavenworth. I represent Leavenworth, Fort Leavenworth, and Kickapoo. And tell me if this sounds familiar to you, but my town's shrinking. All the people that can afford to leave, they're leaving because their kids have already left, and they've taken all their grandkids with them, and they're leaving, and they're going. If they're not veterans, they're going across the river to Missouri, because I live right on the river, across the river from Missouri, and it's cheaper to live over there. But if they are veterans, they're packing up and they're going to Texas and Florida, because Texas and Florida has all these benefits and all of these facilities and all these services for veterans that Kansas doesn't have. So my goal getting in the legislature was to try to bring my town back, to try to get people to stay and to get people to come back to Leavenworth. And as part of that, I'm not going to bore you with, it's about, we've got a really big historic downtown that's in bad repair. A lot of businesses have closed and the buildings are deteriorating. So I've done a bunch of stuff with that. But another thing that I've been doing is trying to keep veterans here. Every year in Kansas, we separate 3,000 veterans from Fort Riley, Fort Leavenworth, and McConnell Air Force Base from active duty. And a lot of them have degrees. A lot of them have advanced degrees. A lot of them, a lot of them leave the service with a disability rating through the VA, and they pack up their spouses who are also working age. A lot of them have degrees. A lot of them have advanced degrees. They pack up their kids who could be going to our colleges, and they go off to Texas and Florida. And so one of the big things that I've been trying to do in the legislature in Topeka is trying to do things to keep them here. And I'm glad you mentioned veteran service officers, because I didn't have the first idea how to keep them here. I know what kept me here is my family was here, and my wife had a restaurant. She told me I was staying here. That's why I stayed here. But a lot of, I needed to understand all these folks that don't really have any ties to Kansas, what makes them not choose Kansas and go other places. And so I sat down with a veteran service officer from the VFW who works at the VA hospital there in Leavenworth. I said, hey, when you're having that conversation with those service members getting ready to separate and you're doing their paperwork for them, what kind of questions do they ask you? He said, hold on a minute. And he got up and he went to another office, and he came back with this big spreadsheet. There's a big fold-out thing. I think it was out of the VFW magazine, but if I remember correctly, and it was just a bubble chart. If you've been in the military, you've seen it. The bubble chart, right? Property taxes on cars, every state in the union, green or red or yellow. Property tax on your house. Is your retirement pay taxed? Is your disability pay taxed? All the way down the line, right? And Kansas was like straight red gumballs all the way down the road of stuff that they offered for veterans. I'm like, well, no wonder veterans are leaving the state. So I go, okay, this is something I can attack, right? Because I'm running for office at that point. I don't know what I don't know, and I don't understand how hard things are. So I just barrel in because I don't know. I shouldn't be like trying to do stuff right off the bat. And so when I got in, the first thing I tried to do was something that my local VFW had asked me to do, which is a veterans home for the northeast quadrant of Kansas. Because right now we've got two veterans homes. We've got one down in Winfield, in the southeast corner, which I was at a couple of years ago, and we got one down in Dodge City, which I was at like a week or two ago for the first time, which is sort of far away from where most people live, and really far away from where most of the veterans in the state live. So not surprising that we don't, they're not at full capacity, and a lot of people don't want to stay there. And in fact, in Leavenworth, what happens is a lot of people, they move before they know they're going to need the veterans home. They move over into Missouri like a year or two ahead of time so they can establish residency. So when they need a nursing home, they can go to a Missouri nursing home. Missouri has 4 or more. Like all the states around us have at least twice as many as we do, if not more. So I'm like, hey, I didn't know any better. I'm like, hey, I can do that. And so I filed a bill. I got as many co-sponsors as I could. And we were able to get funding for a veterans home for Northeast Kansas. Now, the way veterans homes work, it used to be that the federal government ran all the nursing homes, right? The veterans homes. Well, the VA wanted to get out of the veterans home business. So they basically did a cost sharing thing with the state. So the state puts up 35%, the federal government puts up 65%, and then the state has to run it. But all those veterans in the veterans home, they're all getting VA benefits and Medicaid and Medicare. So that helps pay for the care for the veterans, but then the VA doesn't have to pay for all the employees in the veterans home. So we have the funding. We've already done the bonds for the 35% for the veterans home. Now this is how stuff works in Topeka, right? I'm like, well, golly, I'm the representative from Leavenworth, and Leavenworth's got a bunch of veterans, so I guess they'll put the veterans home in Leavenworth. And we did a bid and everything because they had a bidding process. But the way that the place got picked, and this goes to my next point, the way the place got picked is the governor got a bunch of people in a room who worked for her to pick her home district in Topeka, or Senate district for which she was senator in Topeka. When I found out what they're doing, I raised a big stink. I got all the veterans and all the members of the Veterans and the Military Committee to sign a letter with me demanding that she put an American Legion and a VFW rep on the board. And so she went around the government again and found people who were members of the American Legion and the VFW who worked for her, put them on the board, and then picked the same spot. So it's going to be in Topeka. It's going to be right next to the VA hospital in Topeka. But, I'm not happy with the location, but I'm a lot happier than I am with Winfield or Dodge. So that's where it's going to be. They've already done all the plans for it. Now we've got to get the money from the federal government to actually build the thing, the 65%. The good news is that Senator Moran is the chairman of the Veterans Committee in the Senate now. So God willing, that's going to bump us up in the list a little bit. And Senator Moran, like every time he sees me, he knows what I'm going to ask him about. He goes, I'm working on it. So I'm going to stay on him. But if he ever comes through Salina, when you see him, ask him when we're going to get the money for our veterans home, because that's really the only thing stopping it from being built right now. But we have the money at the state level. It's just a matter of getting the federal VA to do their 65%. Another thing that so the way that we find out in the legislature what it is y'all want is through a summit that we do every year. It's in October, September, October. It moves around a little bit, but it's in Topeka and it's at the State House. Our caucus in the House is very, very veteran friendly. The Speaker of the House, Dan Hawkins, he's a former 13 Echo fire direction guy, field artillery in the National Guard. Our Majority Leader, Chris Croft, he is a retired colonel, logistics. Our Speaker Pro Tem is a current lieutenant in the Air Guard, so we all give him shit because he's only a lieutenant. But he's a Speaker Pro Tem, and then we got a lot of veterans in the House, and so and there's quite a few in the Senate as well. A lot more than in most legislatures, but it's still a percentage. It's not like half. It's not like quarter. It's like 10%, maybe. I'm being generous. And so a lot of the challenges that we have with getting stuff done is we don't have any lobbyists. We don't have anybody who comes to the Capitol to go door to door and talk to legislators about veterans issues. If you're UPS and you want robot cars to drive your crap around Kansas, you hire a bunch of lobbyists. You hire a lawyer firm, and they come and they go door to door and they talk to us about why having robot cars is better than sliced bread. You need to vote for it. If you are Enterprise Rent-A-Car and you don't like that new thing, what is it, Turo, where they can rent out cars, you just lobbyists, right? You go hire a bunch of lawyers and you come and you lobbyists and you tell them, that's the devil, you shouldn't vote for it, and try to defend your industry. But if you're a veteran and you're trying to get stuff done for veterans, you ain't got a lobbyist, you got you. Now we used to have, and that's why I'm getting back to how we picked our veterans home, we used to have what was called the Kansas Commission on Veterans Affairs, or Veterans Affairs. And it had commissioners, and the commissioners were veterans, guys who had served and they're retired or separated in Kansas, and they were the voice for veterans issues. So if you needed something done for veterans, you go to the commission and the commission would help you lobby. Well, first they did away with all the commissioners. There ain't no commissioners. They're just a director of the commission. And then they changed the name of the commission to the Office for Veteran Services. So everybody forget that we ever had commissioners. So one of the things I'm going to try to do next year, because this next year is my last year in the legislature, is I'm going to try to get the commissioners back. I'm going to try to change the name back. I'm going to try to hold their funding until they ban all the commissioner positions, because it is really hard on me and Scott, a handful of other legislators, being our own lobbyists without that help. But the reason I tell you that is because two things. First, that summit that we do up there, it's open to every veteran. Okay. And if Salina should send everybody in this room to that summit, I'm not going to do public math here, but each one of you gets one vote on what should be our priorities. If the state VFW just sends the three guys at the top, they get 3 votes. Each of them gets 1 vote, same as your vote. It's not a summit of the bigwigs of veterans. It's a summit of veterans. So if you're a veteran and you show up for that summit, you get 1 vote. And so Scott is always there. He'll let you know. And Steve Howell let you know when we're doing the next summit. After this, I'll hand out some cards. I got a card and it's got a little QR code where you can get on my newsletter, where I'll tell you when it is every year. But that's where we get told by y'all what it is you want us to work on. Yes. And so I encourage you all to be there, every one of you to be there, so that you can tell us what's important to you. We've been, every year I've been in the legislature, we've done that. Chris Croft, who's now the majority leader, actually started it the year before I got in the legislature. And he kind of is the host of it. Some years I co-host, some years I'm just an attendee. but I'm always there because I want to hear from y'all what you want's working on. But what we've been hearing for the last 3 years consistently is disabled veteran property tax relief. And that just happens to be on my list too, because that's why everybody's going to Texas and Florida, is because they've got it and we don't have it. It'd be on my list anyways when you guys told me to do it, but it was on my list before you told me to do it. So we've been working on this thing for really 4 years, but 3 years we've actually had a bill and gotten it someplace. And so I want to tell you kind of the story of the bill, where we're at now and where I think we're going. And then I'm going to shut up and answer any questions you got. So a few years ago, I filed a bill, House Bill 2020, not that that matters, don't even write it down because it's no longer the number, that provided property tax relief for disabled veterans. And the way it was written was if you were 50% or more disabled, you would get relief on like a sliding scale. And so if you're 50%, I think you got like 70% relief or 60% relief or something like that. It went up in 10% intervals. If you were 70% or more disabled, you got total property tax relief, right? And that thing sailed through because who's going to fight that, right? So we got it to the floor of the House. One guy voted against it out of the whole House because there's always one. And we got it passed in the House. But we got it passed in the House at the end of the session. And so there wasn't time for it to go over to the Senate to be passed in the Senate. If you remember your schoolhouse rock, it has to pass the House, has to go through a committee, go through the House, and it has to go through a committee in the Senate, and then go through a committee in the Senate, or go to the floor of the Senate and pass, and then it can go to the governor's desk. So it didn't go over to the Senate the year that it passed in the House. But we go by the biennium, the 2-year cycle, and tax bills, they stay alive over the, kind of over the break, because we're a 90-day legislature, right? We're only in session 90 days because we're a citizen legislature. Our founders very wisely thought we should have to go back and work and make a living just like all our constituents do, and live around and work around our constituents so they can give us feedback to go back to the legislature. So we left, we came back the next year. It took most of the year to get through the Senate. And the reason it took most of the year to get through the Senate is because in the off season, the schools, the cities, the counties figured out what we were up to. And they did not want an exemption for property taxes for anybody, because that's how they fund the schools, the cities, the counties, right? And especially in places like Leavenworth County and Geary County and Riley County, where a significant percentage, somewhere between 7 and 16% of their homeowners are veterans, they really, really didn't want it, right? And so in the off season, I had gone around and I'd talked to them, and the more I talked to them, the madder they got. And now I do want to say, with the exception of Geary County was always on board. They're like, we'll figure out how to pay for it. And I want to make that really clear. Geary County was supportive, but Riley County and Leavenworth, they were not having it. And so we had to figure out how to keep those counties whole and still provide this property tax relief, because that's how stuff happens in the legislature, is a compromise that everybody can live with, right? That gets at what you're trying to do, but that everybody can live with. So what we changed to was a rebate system. So basically, every year you will pay your taxes, your property taxes, to the school, the city, the county, so they have money to operate. And then even if you don't pay any taxes to the state, which I know a lot of veterans don't, because your retirement pay is not taxed, your disability pay is not taxed, and now your Social Security is not taxed, finally. You'll file taxes with the state and say, I paid this much in property taxes, and the state will take whatever taxes you owe out of it, which is for a lot of veterans is zero, and then they will give you a check for the rest, right? So that kind of made those counties okay with it, though my county still was against it because I don't know, whatever. But all the other 104 counties were like, okay, we can support that. So now we've just got to get it in the budget. And so what we ended up with, after all of the kind of negotiations back and forth, House and Senate, was basically two separate measures. And I know this is wonky, but I want to tell you what's happened with it, where we're at. So my bill got whittled down to just 100% disabled. You had to be 100% disabled, and it was a 75% exemption, not a 100% exemption. I wasn't happy with it, but this is how it works in the legislature. So that came out to something like $8 million, something like that. And I know I've been speaking too long because $8 million isn't that much money, but $8 million. So we get it on the books. And then next year I come back and I say, it'd be really nice if we gave them 100% instead of 75%. And it's only $4 million. And so then they go 100%. And then the next year I come back, or somebody comes back, they say, it'd be really nice if we could do this for 90% disabled veterans too. Because what's the difference between 90 and 100? And it's only $4 million. And, I call it a rock soup. Has anybody ever heard that? Like you start out, I'm just going to have rock soup. It's rock and water. And you're like, golly, it'd be great if it had carrots in it. Golly, it'd be great if it had broth. And golly, it'd be great if it had some chicken in it. Pretty soon you got chicken soup, right? That's what I'm trying to do. So, but what we got passed through the House and the Senate was, first, if you're 100% disabled, 75% exempt. But I wanted something on the books for 50% or greater. And a lot of people, they're like, why are we giving breaks to disabled veterans and not to seniors, who are getting priced out of their home? I'm like, hey, the more the merrier, put them in. And so the other half of the bill was 50% disabled or 65 or older, whether you're a veteran or not. We're going to freeze your property taxes at whatever level they are when you became eligible. So you're eligible immediately when the bill passes. That's what you're going to pay for the rest of your life in property taxes. Now, it's the same mechanism. You'd pay your property taxes and then you'd claim whatever was over with the state and you get a check for the difference, right? And the first year or two, it might be like that. But, I don't know how y'all's property taxes are doing. Up in Leavenworth, they're going up like double digits a year. So pretty soon, that's a pretty big damn check, right? So that also was in the bill. And we sent both of those bills to the governor. However, there was other stuff in the bill that none of us wanted. And the poison pill in the bill, the thing that really killed it, there's this guy out in Wichita, he's got a bunch of gyms, and he's mad that cities open gyms to compete with, nonprofit gyms to compete with his for-profit gym. And he wanted a law that said if you open a gym next to my gym, I don't have to pay property taxes anymore because I'm competing with your nonprofit gym. Nobody liked that. Whether it's fair or not, nobody liked that because property taxes aren't fair, damn it. None of us like it. So, but it got stuck in the bill. And it gave the governor all the excuse she needed to veto the bill. And because it was the vote, because we were like, and Scott will tell you, we were fighting and scrapping right up to the last second of the session. The bill, our disabled veteran property tax bill, was the last vote of the last night of the last day of the 2023 session. Or 2023 session. I mean, that's how, no, I think it's 2024 session. 2024 session. And so, because we had already adjourned, we couldn't come back and override the vetoes. And so when she vetoed it, it was dead for the year. So we had to start all over. And so we did start all over. And we've got, both bills are kind of out there in the legislature. We've got our bill, the House version, which is 100% disabled. They bumped it down to 50% to get it under the budget number, but then didn't pass it anyways. It's passed the committee, but it hasn't gone to the floor. And I think that's probably good because I want to get the number back up to 75%. So, we're going to work on that again next year. And then the Senate version, the 50% disabled and seniors, is over in the Senate. It's passed the Senate committee, but it's not passed the floor. And so that's where those two bills are. Really, next year, we got to do them. I mean, next year, it's kind of do or die to get them passed before the end of the session. Because once that even year session is over, all the bills are dead and you have to start over again. So I get asked a lot, why is this so hard? Why, this is a no-brainer. Disabled veterans serve their country. They sacrifice their bodies. The work they do is hard on their bodies and their souls. Why can't we get them property tax relief? Because we don't have any lobbyists. And if y'all don't come up, if you don't talk to your own legislator and you don't come up and talk to all the legislators, you're invisible. Because while Leavenworth County has 7% veterans and Geary County has 16% veterans and Riley County has 7% veterans, the rest of the state, somewhere between 2% and like 0.1% of the homeowners are veterans. And so the legislators that I deal with and that Scott deals with in the legislature, most of them don't know any veterans or know one veteran. And if they don't even know why the issue is important, if they don't know why we're trying to do what we're trying to do, if they don't know your story and, what you had to go through to survive wherever you got deployed to come home to your family and the things that you brought back with you, you got to deal with every day, then you're invisible to them. So I'll just leave you with this. I'm going to shut up and I'm answering any questions you got. There's other bills out there. I could bore you for days. But we really, 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 really need your voice. So I would encourage y'all to come to the summit this fall, make your voice heard, get to know the legislators like me and Scott and Steve Howe and all the folks that are fighting on these things for you. But then when things are in the committee, filling up the committee room with those VFW leather jackets and filling up those committee rooms with the veteran hats speaks way louder than Pat Proctor, representative for Leavenworth, can speak in that house. Because I'm just one of 125, and you all are the folks that were there to serve. So I'm gonna, before I leave, make sure you get a card from me. On the back of it is how you get on my newsletter, so you'll know when these things are in committee and when these things are up for a vote. And I put in my newsletter, like how you contact the tax chairs, how you contact the members of the committee, so you can tell them that you want this done. So I'm going to stop there. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Yes, sir.
One of the Kansas sales tax effective 2026 is on the site.
Yeah. So one of the things they kind of tried to give us to shut us up about property taxes, I hate to say it like that, but it's true, was sales tax relief for disabled veterans. And so to qualify, you got to be 50% or more disabled, and it's a $24,000 a year sales tax exemption. However, it doesn't cover cars, tobacco, or alcohol. So I'm not sure how you're going to rack up 24,000, but you do you. So that law passed the same year that we got the disabled veteran property tax to the governor in 2024. But the Department of Revenue wanted a year to figure out how to implement it. And so it will be in effect in 2026. And KDOR has still not told us how they're going to implement it. I don't know why, because all they got to do is ask Oklahoma, how do you do this, and then do that. But apparently it takes a year to walk to Oklahoma to ask that question. But I imagine it's going to be the way they do it, where you have some kind of number, you put in whatever store you're at, and then the KDOR kind of keeps track and cuts you off when you hit your limit if you figure out how to hit that.